everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I am here for my March 2016 wrap-up video. Now, if you watched my video that I uploaded, I don't know, like a week ago or something, about my life update and what's been going on, you know that I got a dog this month, and that kind of took over my entire life and my brain and motivation to read. So I pretty much started a whole bunch of books at the beginning of the month, found out I was getting a dog happened, and then quickly tried to finish all of those books this past week. So without further ado, let's get into the books that I read. The first book that I finished in March, I think I started it in February actually, is Truth Witch by Susan Dennard, and this book made its rounds on BookTube already, and everybody has very strong opinions about this book. I think I'm in the minority of people who just really didn't like it. I gave this 3 stars, and let me explain why. I went into this knowing what people were saying about it, knowing that it's supposed to have really clunky and confusing world building, and I still struggled with it. Like, everybody said to get through the beginning of it, and it gets really good once you kind of understand what's going on. I don't really like books that you have to get through a section for it to get good. There are way too many other books that I could be putting my time into that I'm going to enjoy all the way through. That being said, I had no idea what was going on. There were so many names and locations and just types of witches or magic that were never explained, and you were just supposed to kind of go along with it and figure it out as you went. And I really don't like that in a book. The other issue I had is I didn't think the characters were that great or original. The Truth Witch character was had that special snowflake aspect that YA characters always have, where she is the only one of her kind and everything's amazing. And then the other girl, who had a very common power, was one of those girls who, for some reason, all of the guys just loved. And together, I didn't think that they made that great of a duo. And I know this book is sold as having an amazing friendship in it, which I appreciate because I appreciate more friendship tales versus romance tales. But I just didn't really care for either of them. I thought that they made really poor decisions and they were very self-involved. And I know that kind of comes with character development, but there wasn't enough backstory on them to actually make me like them. That being said, the one pro that I really liked about this book is the action scenes. Susan Dennard is amazing at writing action scenes, so if she could get somebody to write the world development for those action scenes, it would be a flawless book. But I just don't think that the really exciting action moments balanced out with the lack of knowledge that I had going into them. So I gave this 3 stars. It kind of fell in the middle. The next book that I read, or I listened to it this month, is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, and this is a book that was very popular last year when it came out. It's won a ton of awards, and I don't really have anything bad to say about this book. It's a World War II story told from the perspective of a girl who is blind and a boy who is German and gets recruited into Hitler's youth, and how their paths eventually cross. The writing is beautiful. The interconnectivity, is that a word? It is now. With all the symbolism in this book is just beautiful. The reference to light and dark is just amazing, and I feel like the side of the story that was told from the blind girl's perspective, you kind of follow her through her adolescence, is very reminiscent to, what's that movie? A Beautiful Life? I think that's the one, where it just kind of shows how people try and shelter children from the horrors of war and how they get exposed to it regardless. And so that was a very different aspect to World War II that I appreciated seeing. And then you also read from the perspective of a German boy who was thrown into the concept of the Nazis and Hitler's youth. And it was just very eye-opening, pun intended, to see both sides on how one girl is very sheltered and literally can't see the world that she is in, and this guy who has his eyes wide open to the horrors of war. I just really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It's beautiful. I highly recommend it. And then I got to The Rosie Effect by Graham Cincian, and this is the sequel to The Rosie Project, which I read last year, I believe, or earlier this year. The Rosie Project is essentially Sheldon Cooper tries to find a wife, and it's humorous, it's enjoyable, it's lovable, and I just wanted to continue on with the series. I'm not going to give you any plot synopsis because this is a sequel, and I don't want to ruin the first one for anybody. I really enjoy the characters in this. I liked that they got fleshed out a little bit more. I felt like there was a lot in the story that was not very realistic or believable, which kind of ruined it for me, just because you start to deal with more serious real life issues versus just kind of the dating world. But I still enjoyed it, I still laughed in it, and I still like these characters. I gave it 3 stars. If you like that series, I recommend picking this one up. The next book that I got to is Hidden Bodies by Carolyn Kepnes. This is the sequel to You, which everybody read last year, including myself, and I loved You. Everything about it, how creepy and mysterious and morbid that book was, I loved everything about it. The writing was just so on par for the characters and how uncomfortable you were supposed to feel through the whole thing. And I loved the ending. I loved how ominous it was, and it would fit the characters and the story perfectly. And I feel like it should have just ended there. That being said, I still wanted to read the sequel. And I feel like the sequel was a good, enjoyable book on its own. I don't think it necessarily helped the first one. I don't think it was necessary at all, to be honest. But her writing is so intriguing to me that I'm going to probably pick up everything that she writes at this point. So I really liked this book. You got to follow Joe around in all of his creepy glory again. The only thing that was kind of taken out of this was the shock factor, just because you didn't know how far his creepiness would go in the first one, and now that you have an idea of it, there's not that much like, oh my god, I can't believe he's thinking that moments for me. But I still really liked it, and it still messes with your head and your own morals as you're reading it, because you're in his head and you see how he rationalizes and justifies everything, and you're like, yeah, rooting for him, and then you're like, whoa, he's nutso, I shouldn't be rooting for him. So I did really enjoy this book. I gave it 3 stars. If you liked You, I would recommend picking it up because it's very reminiscent of it. I just kind of wish that You had been a standalone, and I loved the ending to it, and I don't think it needed a sequel. The next book that I read is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys, or Sepetys, I don't know how to say her name. Everybody says it different. I love her. She is one of the best authors in YA at this point in time, in my opinion. Between Shades of Grey is another one of her books that I read, and that book is also amazing, and I highly recommend that. She brings us back to World War II in this book. I did not intend to read multiple World War II books in this month, but it just kind of happened. This book is told from the perspective of 4 teenagers or young adults going through kind of the ending part of World War II, and all of these characters are from different parts of the war. We have a German soldier, we have a Prussian, we have a Lithuanian, I think she was, and we have a Polish girl, I believe. So you kind of get perspective from all sides of the war and how it's affected all of them. And I liked that it brought up the fact that we're at the end of the war, and these now teenagers, their entire childhood was the war, and that's heartbreaking to me to see that perspective, that literally their entire life and their memories are World War II. That's so saddening to me. But this also addresses the biggest maritime tragedy ever in the history of the world, and nobody has really heard about it. And I just really like that Ruta Sepetys brings light to topics of war that are not that discussed about. So I just really, really like her stories. They're very easy to read through, but they're very informative, and her author's note at the end that discusses what is real and what's fiction, adds so much more depth to the stories. So I'm gonna highly recommend this book. I gave it 4 stars. It's good. It's great. So the next book that I want to talk about is Uprooted, and this is by Naomi Novik. This book, its following is a love-hate relationship. If you scroll through the reviews on Goodreads, it is either a 5-star book or a 1-star book. There is no in-between. I am that weird person where I'm in the middle, because I can see both stories, I can see both sides of it. I gave this 4 stars just because this was a good mood read for me. I happen to be very much in the mood for a high fantasy, fairy tale-esque type story, so this was literally perfect for me. So I feel like that kind of influenced my opinion on it. This is about a girl who lives in a town, and there's a very Hunger Games-ish moment where this wizard called the Dragon, where he comes into town every 10 years and pretty much takes a girl with him. And nobody really knows what happens to them, but they do eventually come back, and they're generally fine, but they don't talk about their experience. So everybody plans on it being the one girl who is really talented and pretty, and of course it's not. Sorry, spoiler, but of course it's going to be the narrator of the book. And it's pretty much her experience in the tower with him, learning about the world, learning about the horrors of the wood, which is invading her village and all the local villages, and the wizard's job is to keep the wood at bay. So I can see the flaws that everybody saw in this, and that they all are kind of that very tropey character. I kind of overlooked that. I just really enjoyed them. A lot of people really didn't like the dragon in this because he's kind of an asshole. That made me like him, to be honest. His lines made me bust up laughing. Every time he was just like, wow, you're an idiot, I died. I don't know why. I'm maybe a terrible person inside, but I just loved his lines and how obnoxiously jerky he was. But I gave this 4 stars. Again, not a 5 or a 1 star. I just happened to really, really need a book like this at the time. So I'm gonna recommend this book. That's it. I'm gonna recommend it. And the last book that I got to, nobody's allowed to judge me for this, okay? Okay? It's this one. I had a Walmart gift card that I randomly found in my wallet, and I decided to use it on books, so technically this was free because it was not my money, it was a gift card. So, yeah, I picked this up just to kind of see what it was, because everybody was like super hyped about it the day that it came out, and then it has since fallen off the radar, so I was like, okay, let's just try it. This book. Okay, if you read the author's note at the beginning of this from Stephanie Meyer, I got kind of excited because I knew that it was the gender switch. She switched everybody's roles so that there's kind of gender equality. The story can go both ways. It's not just like a damsel in distress story. I get what she was trying to do. It was not done well. But I was excited mainly because she said that she could go through and essentially just rewrite Twilight and fix all of the stuff that she personally had issues with and that other people had issues with. So I was like, okay, this is gonna be so much better and like actually thought through and has input in it. There were still errors in it. There were still nothing I honestly couldn't tell you what she changed that she didn't like from Twilight other than the gender and trying to smash everything necessary for a complete story into the retelling of a first story. It just... So that's gonna be it for this month. Those are the 7 books? Yeah, 7 books that I got to this month. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys are reading some amazing books, and I will see you next time.